Imagine a lone rider, clad in black, face hidden by a green scarf, tearing through the elite ranks of the Byzantine army like a whirlwind. This warrior fought with such ferocity and skill that even the legendary general Khalid ibn al-Walid, the Sword of Allah, paused in awe, wondering who this mysterious knight could be. This wasn't a seasoned veteran or a mythical phantom. This was Khawla bint al-Azwar, a woman who would become one of the most formidable warriors in the history of the 7th century. To understand the legend of Khawla, we must first understand the world into which she was born. In the early 7th century, the Arabian Peninsula was a place of shifting sands and shifting loyalties. It was a brutal environment where survival depended on the strength of one's tribe and the sharpness of one's blade. Khawla was born into the Banu Asad tribe, a lineage known for its fierce warriors and poets. Her father was a chieftain, but the most influential figure in her early life was her brother, Dirar ibn al-Azwar.
Dirar was a giant of a man, a celebrated commander in the Rashidun army, known for his ability to fight without armor to intimidate his enemies. In a time when girls were often relegated to the background, Dirar saw something different in his sister. He didn't just see a sibling, he saw a partner. He taught Khawla everything he knew. He taught her how to ride the fastest Arabian horses until she could practically move as one with the animal. He taught her the art of the spear, the balance of the sword, and the psychological grit required to stand your ground when a wall of armored men is charging toward you.
Khawla didn't just learn these skills, she mastered them. She possessed a natural grace combined with a terrifying lethality. While other young women were preparing for domestic lives, Khawla was sparring in the dust of the desert, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She grew up with the values of the early Islamic movement: valor, justice, and an unwavering devotion to her faith and her family. The turning point in Khawla's life came during the Rashidun conquest of the Levant. The year was 634 AD. The Muslim forces were engaged in a desperate struggle against the Byzantine Empire, the superpower of the day. At the Battle of Ajnadain, the stakes couldn't have been higher. During the heat of the conflict, Dirar, fighting with his usual reckless bravery, was surrounded and captured by Byzantine forces. When the news reached the Muslim camp, the soldiers were devastated. Dirar was a symbol of their strength. But for Khawla, the news was a physical blow. Her brother, her mentor, and her closest companion was being hauled away in chains to a Byzantine prison. While the commanders debated their next move, Khawla didn't wait for an order. She didn't ask for permission.
She took a suit of armor, grabbed a heavy lance, and wrapped a green shawl around her face to hide her features. She mounted her horse and rode toward the front lines. To the soldiers watching from the ridge, she appeared out of nowhere. She looked like a shadow cast by the sun, a dark specter of vengeance.
Khawla charged into the Byzantine ranks alone. She didn't just attack, she decimated. Witnesses described her as a shining knight who moved with a speed that defied logic. She pierced through the Byzantine lines, her spear finding the gaps in their heavy armor. She fought with a desperate, calculated rage. The Byzantine soldiers, who were used to fighting organized infantry, were terrified by this singular, silent rider who seemed to be everywhere at once.
Khalid ibn al-Walid, observing the battlefield, was stunned. He turned to his men and asked who this knight was, assuming it was one of his elite commanders. But all his commanders were standing right there beside him. Khalid, never one to let a tactical advantage go to waste, ordered a general charge to support this mysterious warrior. Together, they broke the Byzantine line. It was only after the dust had settled and the enemy had retreated that the truth came out. Khalid rode up to the mysterious knight, who was covered in the blood of her enemies. He demanded to know their identity. Khawla remained silent, trying to turn her horse away. She didn't want the fame, she only wanted her brother. But Khalid persisted. Finally, she lowered the green scarf. The shock that rippled through the army was immense. A woman had just performed feats of bravery that the most hardened veterans could barely fathom.
Khalid, moved by her devotion and skill, gave her something rarely afforded to anyone. He gave her command of a unit to go and rescue her brother.
Khawla led the pursuit. She tracked the Byzantine column that was transporting the prisoners. With the same ferocity she had shown at Ajnadain, she led a lightning strike against the guards. In the chaos of the skirmish, she personally cut the bonds of the prisoners. When she finally reached Dirar, the reunion was not one of tears, but of steel. She handed him a weapon, and together the siblings fought their way back to the safety of the Muslim lines.
But Khawla's story was only beginning. Her most famous exploit, the one that cemented her place in history and mystery, occurred during the Battle of Sahura. During a later engagement, Khawla and a group of other women were in the rear of the army, tending to the wounded and managing the supplies. In a sudden Byzantine counter-raid, the camp was overrun. Khawla and several other women were captured and taken to the tent of the Byzantine commander.
The commander, seeing the beauty and stature of Khawla, intended to keep her as a prize. He mocked the women, believing them to be helpless without their men. He couldn't have been more wrong. Khawla stood tall and addressed the other women. She told them that dying in honor was better than living in disgrace. She reminded them that they were the daughters of the desert, the sisters of warriors.
However, they had no swords. They had no shields. What they had were the heavy wooden poles that held up their tents. Under Khawla's direction, the women pulled the poles from the ground. They sharpened the ends against stones and formed a circle, back to back.
When the Byzantine soldiers came to claim them, they were met not with pleas for mercy, but with a wall of timber and fury. Khawla led the charge, using her tent pole like a lance. She struck down the soldiers who tried to approach. The other women, inspired by her defiance, fought with a savage intensity. They managed to hold off the armed soldiers, killing several, until the Muslim cavalry, alerted by the commotion, arrived to finish the job. Khawla herself is said to have killed the commander who had insulted them.
As the wars continued, Khawla's presence became a morale booster for the Rashidun forces. At the Battle of Yarmouk, one of the most decisive battles in world history, she was once again on the front lines. When a portion of the Muslim flank began to buckle under the sheer weight of the Byzantine numbers, it was Khawla and a group of women who stood their ground at the back of the camp. They shamed the retreating soldiers, forcing them to turn back and face the enemy. Khawla took up her sword and joined the fray, proving that her earlier exploits were no fluke. The mystery of Khawla bint al-Azwar lies in the blurred lines between history and legend. Some modern historians have questioned the extent of her exploits, noting that the primary source for her life, the writings of the 8th century historian al-Walid, often included dramatized accounts of the Islamic conquests. Skeptics argue that Khawla might be a composite character, a personification of the many brave women who undoubtedly contributed to the early Islamic State.
However, to dismiss her as mere fiction is to ignore the cultural impact she has had for over 1,000 years. In the Arab world, Khawla is not a myth. She is a beacon. She represents a tradition of female strength that existed long before modern movements for equality. There are schools, roads, and even an all-female military college in the United Arab Emirates named in her honor. Whether she killed 5 men or 50 in a single charge, the core of her story remains: a woman who stepped out of the shadows of her time to redefine what was possible.
Khawla's later life is less documented, which adds to her enigma. Some accounts suggest she married a powerful prince and lived a long life, while others say she died shortly after the conquests. Regardless of how her life ended, her legacy was already written in the sands of the Levant.
She was known as the Black Knight and the Desert Knight. She was a woman who mastered the tools of her era to protect her family and fight for her beliefs. She proved that the spirit of a warrior knows no gender, and that in the heat of battle, the only thing that matters is the strength of one's heart and the sharpness of one's aim.
Khawla bint al-Azwar remains a towering figure, a reminder of a time when the world was being reshaped by the swords of those who dared to dream of a different future. Her story is a testament to the fact that history isn't just made by generals and kings, but by those who refuse to sit still when their world is on fire. She was the ghost in the ranks, the green-scarfed shadow, the woman who rode like the wind and fought like a storm.
Subscribe for more history